Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. Yeah, I could not wait. I got off work and it's been a stressful day. The start of school for me is always the most stressful time, and I got off work and I was gonna keep my nice school clothes on. I was like, nah, I need like a shower to get like some juice and just sit down here and watch Mob Psycho. I need it after today because I feel like my stress level has reached the 100%. So I was like, I need Mob Psycho. It just needs to happen. So I'm not dressed fancy for this episode, but that's okay. We can take the day off, right? I'm in the body improvement club. Last episode was so good. It was so good, subverting our expectation of what club Mob was going to join. He's now in the Body Improvement Club. I really hope we see more of them in this series. I really, really do, because I think that'd be hilarious. But before we start, my only shameless Patreon plug will be that if you want to see next week's episode, it's $5 for the month. But if you don't, it's just $1. Join the Discord. And I only bring that up because on Patreon, we have been having a lot of fun with Mob Psycho in the Discord. It's become the Reagan Thirst channel. Not really. Mob has slowly infiltrated into this channel, and now it's Mob and Reagan. But I have to say, Carrie, thank you for giving me these posts that I want to talk about before we start episode 3. The first one I want to talk about is that image from the last episode where Reagan is like doing the hand through his hair and he's like, as he's like giving the masseuse. Yeah. Carrie pointed out this tweet from Kelly, at Kelly1Lani, that shows what it actually looks like in the manga versus the anime. And we've been talking about it in the channel, but yeah, basically the animators are all just horny for Reagan and want to make him look as great as possible because there's no comparison. There's nothing similar about that. It's ridiculous. He's just like, versus this Rin Matsuoka like swoosh. No, it was amazing. I'm so excited to see in the Discord, after I get done watching episodes, going to the Discord and talking about the episode and then seeing like what manga comparisons there are, because that got me really good. But also, Kiri also pointed out before we start, there are profiles for both Mob and Reagan, like character profiles. And I thought I wanted to bring them up before we start. Luckily, Kiri has kindly, apparently Mob has another nickname, but they've blurted it out so it's not a spoiler. So thank you for not spoiling me on that. But yeah, so Mob, he's a Taurus, baby! I'm a Taurus, Mob's a Taurus protagonist for life. I'm all about it. But yeah, his birthday's May 12th. He's 14 years old, blood type O. Not 0. His animal zodiac is a tiger, which seems rather appropriate. I'm a dragon, so you know. Zodiac Taurus, 157.7 centimeters, 44 kilograms. What he does best, not sticking out. What he does worst, reading mood. Oh, which is kind of funny because he's telepathic, and him not being able to read mood is kind of hilarious. His specialty is making dogs float. Which that Tsubomi, that girl didn't like that. Like, how could you not? His hobby is watching the sky, so he's a daydreamer. And then his favorite food is takoyaki, milk, and ramen. His least favorite food is cilantro, shiokara, and locusts. Why would you eat locusts? I guess, maybe that's a delicacy where he's from. Favorite music is cheerful sounding ones. No specific genre, just cheerful music. Favorite movie genre is action. Catchphrase, I don't really get it. And recently got into the Body Improvement Club. I was like, that's so cool. So then Reagan also has a character profile. He's a freaking Libra, which my dad is a Libra. And I was saying this to the channel. My dad's a Libra, and it all makes sense because my dad is a very similar style of humor to Reagan. I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. Although he's not a con artist, so there's that. Blood type is O, same blood type. Birthday's October 10th. He's 28. Seems like a late 20s existential crisis. I like it. His animal zodiac is the rat, which I feel is highly appropriate. 179 centimeters, 66 kilograms. What he does best, people say that he has a kind heart. What he does worst, he is too kind to scold anyone. It's like a compliment on top of that. His specialty is fraud, consulting people. And then his hobby is browsing the internet. Browsing the internet is his hobby. I can't imagine what he's browsing the internet for. His favorite food is ramen and yakiniku. So it's cool that him and Mob have the same favorite foods, so they can bond over ramen. Makes sense. Least favorite food is nothing in particular, so he's not a picky eater. Good to know. Favorite music is classic music at his working place. Okay. And favorite movie genre is watching B-rated movies and falling asleep. Of course he'd like B-rated movies. I just imagine him watching like Reanimator or like Miami Connection or like some kind of B movie. I kind of like B movies too, so I could see him being like all about that. And then Curie has X'd out the stuff that I can't read because it would be a spoiler, so thank you for doing that. But I thought those were fun. So yeah, if you get a chance to join the Discord on Patreon, we have a lot of fun talking about Mob Psycho. It's a great time. But that's my shameless plug. So anyway, we're gonna get started and see what all happens in episode 3. I'm really liking this show so far, and I'm excited to see what happens now that we've got a little bit into Reagan, a little bit into Mob. I'm curious to see where it goes and what all we get, but we're gonna find out. So I can't believe this episode will be a fourth of the way through season 1. Crazy talk. Although there's 3 seasons, so we got plenty of Mob Psycho left. But we are gonna dive into Mob Psycho episode 3, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh! So this show just jumped up a notch like out of nowhere. Oh my god. So yeah, Mob's already exploded and then he goes back to 0. See, I was wondering what was going to happen, because going into this series, when we were already at like 40% at the end of last episode, I was like this season is 12 episodes, and if we've jumped up to 40% within the first 2 episodes, like, we're not gonna make it to episode 12. No, we didn't. This episode was done. Yeah. But he just goes back to 0 and then builds all the energy up and then explodes again. That's a really cool mechanism, because that means that throughout this season and this series, Mob will just keep building up. Like, he'll just keep ramping up and then he'll just burst it all out and then go back. It's like, and I like the explanation the show gives that it's kind of puberty that's brought it on, that he's bottling up all these emotions, but puberty's kind of like spurring him on, and so he just doesn't know what to do with them, and then they just burst out, right? God, this episode. Wow. I did not go at all where I thought it would. I was expecting, when we started out this episode with the Body Improvement Club, I thought this episode was just going to be like a nonchalant little jaunt with the Body Improvement Club. Like, I thought maybe him and the president of the Telepathy Club would like have like an outing or something, and they talk about aliens. But instead, he gets kidnapped and brought into a cult, and then the cult leader turns out to be an evil spirit, and then Mob has to destroy the evil spirit to save everybody. It went like 90 degrees the opposite direction, and I was so happy about it, but oh my god, we're only 3 episodes in. We are 3 episodes in. For the record, Mob, the rage mode look on Mob is a pretty good look. He looks very intimidating and a lot more older and mature in that look, and then he goes back to being Mob. Oh my god. So, let's talk about this episode. Holy cow, I was floored. So, what I love is that the Body Improvement Club, I love that they are totally on board with Mob being a member of them. I like that this, some people were saying in the Discord about Mob Psycho, they're like, look, and I think Annie Kyron was talking in the comments on Patreon, saying that this series, that a lot of people like Mob Psycho, but the people that don't are because it subverts a lot of shonen tropes. And I'm like, oh yeah, it subverts a lot. But they all are subverted in ways that I really like. Like, I like that the big jock club are not a bunch of assholes. They're like actually really nice, and they're just going about their business. Now, granted, they look 27 instead of 13, but that's kind of making fun of an anime trope anyway, because a lot of anime characters in high school look like they're middle-aged, so it's kind of playing off of that. It's just hilarious that they're middle schoolers. That makes it even worse. But I like that Mob just wants to appease Tsubomi-chan. He just wants to be popular and win the love of the girl he has a crush on. And I'm like, dude, you could do better. I'm rooting for him and this girl that is the president of the newspaper club. I'm rooting for him and her. Like, he saved her life inadvertently. I'm like, dude, she seems pretty cool. Why don't you go after her? She seems like she wouldn't judge you like Tsubomi. Yeah, you can do better, Mob. I'm not a big fan of Sabomi right now because she's just ignoring him. And the whole get a clue. We'll talk about it. But I want to make note that I know that I compared it to Run with the Wind and that there are hundreds of locations in Japan that look like this exact same location. But all I could think of was Run with the Wind and the Body Improvement Club running and just Mob struggling. And Mob is like Prince from Run with the Wind where his arms are just flailing and he's trying so hard. I love that the animation, some of you in the Discord have you've shown me some panels from the manga and from the webcomic, and it's very rough. It's very rough, and apparently One Punch Man, like, someone was hired to redraw it. I love it, but I wish that stuff that I drew could get redrawn by a professional animator. That'd be great. But I like that poor Mob, like, it looks like it's the most rough, like, awful sketch. And what I like about this show is that the animation style, again, I talked about this in episode 1, it's not that the artist can't draw it, it's that they are deliberately choosing their style to convey certain emotions. And so, like, the part here where Mob at the very beginning of the episode is running and sweating, the animation is really, like, clunky and doodly and kind of not great, but it's conveying that emotion of him just being exhausted. And then when we get to the part where he's fighting the dimplesama, it's like the animation's insane and Mob looks great in rage mode, and it's like, whoa, because the animation is needed there. So I like this show understands exactly what it's doing. And it understands the reason that it animates certain ways. And like the poor Body Improvement Club, they're like, oh, this is not good. I like that the one man, he's like, he must be anemic. Like, I love he like cradles these men that are supposed to be 14 that have the muscles of grown Olympic swimmers are like cradling Mob. And he's like, he must be anemic. He's like, showy. And he like collapses. I love he just dies. It's great. I want to get a picture of that. Like, and the shading gets, again, the art style completely changes and the shading is just absolutely over the top. It's wonderful. But Mob's stamina is 0. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the OP, which I love so much. And it's great. So we'll talk about the OP as we go. But I like that the big smiley thing that's flying back and forth. Now that makes sense in the OP. It's dimplesama. Glad that we got that. Glad we got that out of the way. Cool. But, so yeah. So, the Telepathy Club, I am glad that they're still around. Basically, they got to keep the club room. All the Body Improvement Club wanted it for was to store their equipment. So, I like that the president was like, if you just let us stay in here and, like, do nothing, we'll let you put all your equipment in here. And it worked out scot-free. See? Again, subverting what you expect for shonen, because I think of again, I talked about Jujutsu Kaisen in the last episode, and this isn't really spoilers, but the club that wants to take over, it's that big drama of like, we're gonna kick you out and we want this space and blah blah blah. And it's just like just drama. And so I like that this show is like, no, there's no drama. They worked out an agreement. It's all cool. And I like that the Body Improvement Club, they bring Mob to them. And it's like, here, you take care of me, passed out. I also like that Kurata is losing horribly to Shoji, right? I think that's hers that are black and she's losing horribly. I love she's like, hey! Just tosses the board. That's great. And the Body Improvement Lower Body Strengthening Month. Oh my god, and they have like all the reps on the board. They have like the repetitions and the exercise menu. That's great. But I like the one guy's in the corner reading the manga. The other guy's like on his DS. It's wonderful. And so they're like, thank you for letting us use the room. And he's like, it's okay, you guys. You don't have to grovel. I love that he has Mob on one arm, like just toting him around. And they're like, Kageyama passed out. Could you watch over him? Poor Mob. But yeah, I like the Telepathy Club is like, dude, why did you join the Body Improvement Club? They're like, you are not physically in line with any of these guys, so why did you do it? And Mob's like, I've never been the most athletic guy. Shocker of the century. And I'm a slow runner. And I love that his whole thing is like, he's relied on his psychic powers for everything. And so I like that Mob's trying to be like, I don't want to have to rely on my psychic powers for everything in life. I want to try to, be able to, be somebody that can be reliable in other ways. And Kurata kind of sees through it. She's like, oh, you like a girl. Like, dude, don't go after a girl that's just after you for your body. Like, that's not gonna ever work, right? And I love that he demonstrates, like, his psychic powers. The one guy that he went to grade school with was like, oh shit, when we were in grade school, you could only bend spoons. Now you can move all this stuff around with your mind. Holy crap, that's a big improvement, right? He's got the mind improvement. He could only bend spoons before. And then Karada's like, hey, I love that she's like, hey, you could help me make my dream come true. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, she's like, you could help me prove if aliens exist. And Mob's like, I don't really think that's how telepathy works. I love their uniforms. I think of Sailor Moon every time I see their uniforms because it's just like, the colors and everything, it's very Sailor Moon-esque. I like it. And so she establishes that she tried to have psychic powers so that she could see if there was, extraterrestrial life, but it didn't work. So that kind of establishes in here, in this world, in the world building, you cannot develop psychic powers. You're either born with it or you're not. And she was not. So she, upon learning that Mob is an actual psychic, is like, let's boldly go where no man's gone before. We can't say too much, otherwise it'll be copyright, but let's go and find some extraterrestrial life. And Mob's like, no, I've got weightlifting. She's like, why? She's like, I love how serious she gets. She's like, why? I'm burning with passion here. Why are you so cold? Like, she's like, can't you see how passionate I am? Why are you ignoring me? And with Mob, he's like, I finally found something that I want to do. And she's like, putting on muscle? Really? She's like, but you have psychic powers. I like that Karada's like, why are you trying to not take advantage of the gift that you have? She's like, you have been gifted with telepathic powers. Who cares about muscle? She's like, the guys with muscles, they don't have those other abilities, so they have to rely on their bodies. She's like, you've got something special. So I like that she acknowledges that with Mob. And Mob's like, well, let's just say that I want to become more appealing as a man. And she's like, oh, you want to be popular, Mob-kun. And then he's like, yes. And I love his little blush. She's like, no, not really. And she's like, Mob, that's not going to happen. And he's like, She's like, even if you gain muscle, you're not going to become popular. Not a chance. And he's like, then what should I do? And she's like, well, read a girl's mind using telepathy, which is not a good idea. No, that's not smart. I think I'm watching Spy Family at the same time. I'm like, the idea of reading somebody's mind, that could backfire quite easily. Probably shouldn't do that, especially involving romance. Like, you don't want to pry into something private like that. So I don't think Karada's advice is good at all. But she's like, you'll be super popular. And he's like, And so he goes to Reagan. And I will give Reagan some praise at the end of this episode. I will. I was like, Reagan, look at you. Look at you not being a total trash king this episode. But he kind of is. And we'll get to it when we get to it. But yeah, he's like, so Reagan doesn't lie to him in this moment. He goes, oh, telepathy? I can't do that. I was like, he kind of white lies his way around. He's like, I can hear the voices of spirits though. So Reagan admits, he's like, oh, I can fight spirits with my other powers, but reading people's minds, I can't do that. It's like, you're such garbage. And so Mob is like, what brought this on? And Mob's like, oh, I was just wondering. And I love that Reagan looks slowly up from the newspaper. He's like, why? Is there someone's mind you want to read? And Mob's like, oh, and I just love the close-up on Reagan's face. Why? Why? He's like, it's a girl, huh? He's like, my, Mob-kun, you're so easy to read. And he's like, every middle school boy wants to be popular. He's like, even I wanted to be popular. He's like, it's no need to be embarrassed. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm very curious to know how Reagan was in middle school. That would be kind of ridiculous. Also, I've noticed, I'm watching Neon Genesis Evangelion at the same time. It may happen in 1,000 other anime, but just seeing the close-up on the telephone poles, like as exposition is happening, it reminds me of Neon Genesis a lot. And I'm like, is there any... Everything draws inspiration from Neon Genesis at this point, so I'm like, did it draw inspiration from it? Possibly. And then Mob says, it's not like I want to be popular. I just want to get close to Tsubomi-chan. That's the whole thing. It's not that Mob wants to be popular with everyone. He just wants to be popular so Tsubomi-chan will notice him. He just wants her to notice him and to like him. And I'm like, dude, like, I know you have a crush on this girl, but she seems kind of shallow and not worth it. You should go date somebody else. But you can't tell a middle schooler that, especially if it's their first crush, right? So I'm sorry for cursing. For those of you cursing, when I saw this woman with the mask on, I thought instantly of the flailing thing from the OP and thought that's where we were going, was that we were going to find out what the flailing thing was, which we do. It's dimplesama. But I did not mean to curse. I'm not usually one that likes cursing, but I was just like, oh, what the fudge? Like, what is this? And so, yeah, there was that. And I was like, instantly, the moment you see a mask and a hood on, it's a cult and you should run away. If there's a mask or a hood involved, get out. You don't want to be involved. But Mob, because he is a sweet, sweet summer child, does not know any different. Mob's like, oh, no. And so she tries to get him to get involved. And I was like, Mob, stranger danger. I think that Mob needs a lesson in that you don't go with strangers anywhere by yourself. Absolutely not. But he's a 14-year-old kid and he's just very naive. And I'm like, no, Mob, you need to go home. And the moment she says, I'll help you be popular, he's like, sure, I'll go. An invite to a meeting. Simply put, I just want to be popular. At this point, we're like 6 minutes into this episode and it's already going into places I did not expect it to go. So yeah, a brand new religious order that developed in the last month. It didn't dawn on me how quickly this order had developed until the one girl points out that, yeah, it's only been a month. And then at first you think that it's the guy having psychic powers. And then you realize, no, it's a spirit that has psychic powers. And it's like, okay. But yeah, the mysterious power, he's basically possessing them. I like the Mob's like, so how do I become popular? I was like, Mob, you should have known better. You need to get out of there. LOL is in no way a suspicious group. As they all show up with hoods and masks on. So what I like about this episode that's kind of crazy is that how the mask works, how it makes people instantly laugh, is never explained. It's just the power of the ghost. And maybe that's all that there is to it. It's just the power of the ghost and that's it. But that's all there is. There is no scientific explanation. It's just now the ghost power. So Masato Ichi from his class, Mob, he says he's never talked to her before. I'm like, befriend Masato. I have a feeling Masato's going to try to befriend Mob because she's going to realize that he saved her back then and she's going to try to find more about him. Also, she's seen that he has insane psychic powers. I'm like, dude, if Masato can respect you for your powers, date her. Screw Tsubomi-chan. Forget her. Make her the eggplant head. Go after this Masato girl. She seems like a go-getter. She seems like she can handle your psychic abilities and would appreciate them. But can't tell Mob that. So, God, this episode just gets so crazy. And the fact that this ghost, basically possesses people and does the smiley thing. I also love Mob's face where Mob's like, Mob is just like, I don't get it. He's like, this is really dorky and weird. He's like, He's like, this isn't a popular group. Not at all. But I hated that the mask made the girl and the guy laugh. I hated that, especially when the girl was like, she didn't want to laugh, but for some reason it was making her like she was being possessed. It was so creepy. Such a creepy bunch. And so I like that she says she's from the newspaper club and that she's been trying to figure out what's been going on. She's like a detective. She's doing the undercover work. I'm like, Mob, Masato seems like a pretty cool girl. I think she'd be a lot of fun to hang out with. She's got her camera. She wants to go and discover stuff from the newspaper club. She's doing detective-like work. You're a telepath. You guys would be a great duo. I really hope that Masato sticks around and comes around in future episodes and this wasn't a one-time thing because she seems like she's really cool. But there's so much creepy imagery in this. The animation is so good throughout this and just the way that everybody kind of gets all around her. When she's surrounded by all the people, with the grins and everything, it's really creepy. And they're when they say they won't let her leave until she laughs. I want to get a picture of that. I want to get a picture of that because it's pretty interesting. Like the animation style is really good. But yeah, she's trying not to laugh. And then Mob, the powers don't work because he's got that. Well, they establish there's multiple reasons. Like he's a telepath, and so he can kind of resist it, but he also bottles up all of his emotions. And so we'll talk about that. So Dimplesama's like, what the heck is going on? And so I like that this whole time, Mob's like, moments until Mob explodes, it's been rising and rising like up to 70%. I was like, oh shit, are we getting it in this episode? And we do. And so he tries to do this game where the first person to laugh with the milk in their mouth loses. And I like that the ghost, Dimplesama, kind of realizes, he's like, oh wait, in making all these people instantly want to laugh, I kind of screwed myself, so that's not going to work. So he challenges Mob, and he spikes the milk. And this from here on in, from like the midway point of the episode on, when Dimplesama challenges him with the milk, the animation like just goes up to another level, and things get crazy. And poor Mob, where he's like, oh, and I like that he like has like the chill run through him, like, oh, it's great. And like everything explodes, like the colors and everything gets all pastel and different geometric shapes. And he's like, that milk clearly had something mixed in. I like the narrator kicks in. The narrator's like, that milk had something mixed in. And it gets all like, the animation style gets all like chalky and weird. What the fudge? I love it. And he's like, oh, he laughed and his eyes go crazy. But Mob is like, I did not laugh. No. And so the girl says, even I'm starting to have fun now. Like, it's just that power that he has over them. And Mob's like, no, I didn't laugh. And then oh, and the thing of it is, all that emotion bottling up inside of him, like it all like combines into just rage, which is like, oh, and then he makes everybody like go back to normal. But he's like, why can't I make him laugh? I'll have to go all out. And that's when he decides to like try to use everybody against him. And at first I was like, dude, you're making all these people attack him and grab him. And Mob's just like, why are you fighting? Like, what's going on? And so then that's when the ghost tells him to get a clue. And that's Mob's trigger. The phrase, get a clue. And he goes back to like, why do you look... So this part's really important. You could connect this to other characters from other shows. I think of the character I kept thinking of the most throughout this episode was Mafia from Given. If you've ever watched Given, there's a character Mafia. He's the protagonist of that series. And Mafia's whole thing is that he's just not very good at expressing himself emotionally. He's just not good at expressing himself. So things that make other people like normally cry or make people laugh, Mafia's just like, I don't socially like emotionally know how to react to it. And he's like, and I have a lot of trouble with that. And he's self-aware. He knows he has trouble with it, but he can't do anything about it. He's like, that's just how I am. And so when we have this flashback with Mob, we have all the guys and he's like, well, if you're bored, go home. And Mob's like, but I'm not bored. And they're all kind of goofing off on the slide and laughing about the kid swinging his butt. And he's like, they're like, you're the only one who's not laughing. And he's like, oh. And then you see Subomichan. And the thing of it is, these guys are so mean. It's like, no, Mob's not bored. He just, he doesn't have to express emotions all the time. You can sit there and be an observer of something and not find it funny or find it, a reason to laugh. But then Subomichan, she says, and she says it all nice, and she's like, get a clue. I'm like, get her out of here. Get Masato in here. Get her out of here. Subomichan needs to go. Nope. But that whole get a clue, it's like she's saying, read the room. Like, they don't want you here because you're not having fun with us and you're bringing the mood down. And it's like, Mob didn't do anything. He's not trying to do anything. He's just trying to interact with y'all. Quit being a bunch of bitches. Poor Mob. And then Mob's progress towards his explosion. And so then the Dimplesama was like, I'll show you my true power. And I did have to laugh at this because he tries to get in Mob's face and like make him laugh. And then everybody's laughing and it's his divine power. And when he like moves the hand, nothing happens. And he's like, what? And then he goes back to trying it again. Like, that was great. Like, it just, that part really got me. I was like, oh my God. And he's like, why? Why aren't you laughing? And Mob's like, why aren't my powers working on you? And he's like just sitting there doing this to his face and everything. I'm like, no, Mob's not like that. He's our sweet summer bean who has psychic powers and doesn't want to laugh. He's like, what are you, a corpse? And Mob, he's like, your powers can't make me laugh. I don't hate it. I just couldn't even if I wanted to. He's like, I'm just not built that way. He's like, I don't emotionally react to stuff like everybody else. And that's just how I am. And I'm like, oh, I want to protect this sweet summer child. Like, he is literally a summer child. I want to protect him. He's like, I don't mean anything bad by it though. Yeah, no, that's kind of like Mafia. It's like, no, I don't mean anything bad. I'm not trying to insult or be anything. He's like, that's just not who I am. It's not how it goes. And you can't hate him for it. And this guy, he's like, oh, he's a psychic. And he says, you must not have any emotions, brat. And Mob's like, no, I just got done telling you that's not the case. But then he goes too far. Dimplesama's like, oh, well, if you can't show emotions, then you're not going to get a girl to like you. He's basically saying Tsubomi-chan's not going to like you because the feelings of people resonate with one another, And if you can't make her, and I just love that, like, the explosion, like the progress towards Mob's explosion just gets bigger and bigger. He's like, if you're unable to, like, emotionally resonate, if you can't cry or be moved together, no girl's gonna like you because of that. And I'm like, oh my, and he's like, you'll be forever alone. And then he's like, I'll give you one last chance. Oh my God, to laugh. And no. So, make me laugh with your psychic powers. So I like that. I like that. And he calls him out like, you're a psychic too. Uh-huh. And he's like, so you have similar powers. I like that this ghost is like, I thought I picked a peaceful religious order that caused the least bloodshed. He's like, I wanted to control this population without killing anybody, but you're not going to let that happen. I was like, oh my God. Like, from here on, it just gets so bonkers. I'll have to get rid of the outsider that brings chaos to this environment. And that's when Mob says, thank goodness you're not a person. Because Mob's whole thing, Reagan told him, Reagan's like, you can't use your powers against other people. As your mentor, I told you not to do that. And so Mob's like, oh good, you're not a person, you're a ghost. So I can destroy you and I won't feel bad. Thank goodness the one who said something as horrible as get a clue was an evil spirit. Yeah, like this Mob's face, him just being so terrified. And then the spirit coming out of that guy's mouth, oh my God. It's great. And he tries to like control all of them to get them all to dogpile on Mob. And then Mob has a flashback to Tsubomi and she has the mask on just like Dimplesama and Mob. So we get the narrator saying there is an Esper present here. A grade schooler called Mob by those around him. And in the Discord, they talked about like the meaning of why he's called Mob. And the nickname Mob just means he's part of the crowd. He doesn't stand out. Which is funny because Mob is the one that stands out in the crowd. So it's like, no, Mob, have some more respect for yourself. But the narrator says, even though he's blessed with tremendous powers, he's subconsciously always avoided trying to display those powers. Because he doesn't want to use them, right? As he grew, he gradually realized how dangerous his powers were. And then decided that when people are unable to act or do as they please, then all those emotions come to a halt. So yeah, it's not just that he naturally is unable to express himself emotionally, but the thing is, as Mob grew older, he's realized how dangerous his powers could be and that he could actually hurt somebody if he let his emotions get the better of him and like lashed out. So he's like, if I accidentally lashed out with my powers, I could hurt someone and I don't want to do that. So Mob repressed all these emotions and comes across as a blank slate because of that. And people judge him for it, right? But the thing of it is that as he's grown up, he realized that Mob has not realized There's aversion to using his powers has become a complex. So Mob's developed this wall without realizing it, and it's become like a psychological complex that he can't get around, that he's created for himself, right? But as he's grown older, the thing of it is that the emotions that are locked away deep inside of Mob's heart expand little by little. And then there's a limit to how many emotions he can take before leaking out and going wild. Yeah, he can only bottle it up so long before he goes crazy. And then now an emotion was swirling about him like a torrent trying to go past the limit. I love that there's all these different emotions, and it's like, okay, so the concept is any one of these emotions could explode. It doesn't have to just be rage. It could be any of them. But there's been one specifically that has been building up inside of him, and that's rage. Oh my God. And it just burst the whole floor and everything. Oh my God. And Mob, and his eyes getting red. And just, he looks like a shonen villain, right? And all the people floating behind him. Oh my God. I just cannot. It's great. To think you were such a powerful Esper. No wonder the smile mask didn't work. And he's like, oh, so there's a trick to that mask? And there's this angry Mob where he's like, oh no. He's like, it was so weak. I didn't notice it. Oh my God. It's like, oh well. And he's like, if the policy of your religion is to kill the outsiders, then come at me with everything you've got. That might be easier than making me laugh. Oh my God. It's great. I love the imagery of Mob, like when he's mad. Like his eyes and everything. He's terrifying. Oh my God. And so the spirit is really just, at first it was like a big smoke cloud. And I was like, well, that's kind of intimidating. But then it becomes like this evil spirit, high level Dimple. And he just looks like a traitorous villain. Oh my God. He looks kind of like the villain that was in the last episode too, right? I want to get a picture of Mob in rage mode. It's great. I'm just like, oh my God. And he's like, you're just livestock without emotions. Don't try to act like you're actually angry. And I'm like, no, I think Mob's pretty ticked off. Mob is actually, you've made him explode. And he's like, how about you cry next? And the animation just goes bizarre. It goes bonkers, like balls to the walls. I love it. I love the animation budget was like, we're saving up for the fight. Don't worry. I'm like, I'm fine with that. You can make this like a black and white sketch until this moment. It's fine. And then, of course, the ghost's like, how flashy. But he's like cut off parts of him and blown up chunks of him. Yep. And then I love the ghost's face when Mom's like coming out and he realizes he can actually get hurt. And his face is like so like cartoony. It's so funny. Oh my God. He's like, well, I'll be damned. And then tries to attack. He's like, I never thought I had to fight with full power. So I'm like, dude, Mob is like, at this point, you may be the real thing, brat. Yeah, no, he is the real thing. Oh my God. And he just hacks off his limbs. It's great. Like, Mob is just, I freaking love like his just rage mode. It's insane. I'm like, if Reagan saw this, he'd pee his pants. He's like, they came out upon your request. These are my emotions. Oh my God. This is what happens if I let them show. And he's like, are you some kind of monster? Oh my God. And he tries to fire that beam at him. And he fires it, but it just doesn't really work. No. It doesn't quite work out for him. Even though this guy's like been in a bunch of battles, nah, he hasn't faced anybody like Mob. And then Mob just like hacks him, like just goes, blows him up. And he says, I'm terrible. And he's so sad there. So like Mob knows that he's not doing, so he's like, I'm doing something bad. I'm destroying his spirit. He's like, I'm terrible. I'm like, Mob, I just want to give him a big hug. I hate that Mob is so self-loathing. No. And he leaves, he leaves all those people there, and I'm like, I want Mazzato to like go find him and like be like, hey, what you do is really cool. You saved my life. Like, I want Mazzato to go and become friends with him. Oh. So of course he goes to see Reagan. Of course he goes to see Reagan, and Reagan is like, you want to be able to get a clue? Like, Reagan, that's what he took from the conversation. That's what he took from the conversation. Reagan's like, what? What's going on? What? Social skills like that are beyond you. I like that Reagan is like, as Reagan is trying to give Mob advice, he has ketchup all over his face and he's eating this. I like, instead of McDonald's, it's a Mob burger and like it's the M signal, but it says Mob on the wrapper. Genius. And then Mob's just like, yeah, he's like, the only ones capable of them have common sense and experience. And Mob's just like, oh, he's like, your existence itself. Oh, he's like, although your existence itself makes no sense. I'm like, Reagan, no, leave him alone. But yeah, the Mob, or maybe that says moo. The fries say Mob. No, the bag says Mob too, which is funny. That's hilarious. He's like, why are you bummed out about that now? He's like, you've always known you're like this. He's like, what's wrong? He's like, because I'm such a downer, I ruined a whole bunch of people's fun. I'm like, Mob, those people weren't having fun. They were being possessed by a spirit. You saved them. You didn't ruin their fun. That's how you read that scene. Again, one of Mob's worst trait is that his weakness is that he can't read people's moods. I'm like, no, Mob, you saved those people. And I like that Reagan's like, why? Why do you have to be like them? I kind of like this. I like that Reagan is like sitting there eating his food. He's like, I like the advice that Reagan gives him. He's like, who cares what those people think? He's like, why do they matter? And then he says, you're the protagonist of your own life. I'm like, Reagan, that's actually really good advice. I'm like, he's like, why should Reagan's like, don't try to be popular for anybody else. Like, be yourself. He's like, who cares what they think? You are the protagonist of your own life. I'm like, damn. I'm like, that's really, really good. I will give Reagan this. That is genuine, solid advice. And Mob's like, oh. He's like, that whole group is now gone because of me. He's like, I ruined their cult. I'm like, it's probably a good thing, Mob. He's like, all they were doing was laughing. And he's like, well, your inability to get a clue is pretty destructive. And then Mob's like, oh. He's like, what happened? You can tell me all about it. And so, for all that Reagan is a trash king sitting there eating his Big Mac, notice he didn't give Mob anything. He didn't offer Mob any food. He's just sitting there eating his food being like, what's going on? And so, for all his trash king qualities, I do love that Reagan is like, go on, tell me what's up. Like, you can talk to me. Like, Reagan is genuinely nice to him and a kind friend to Mob. And I'm like, okay. And so then we get all these people being like, where were we? And they find dimplesama and they're like, oh, that's what he looked like? Oh, wow. And then the girl, she's like, wasn't some boy, he's trying to make some boy smile. And the girl's like taking pictures like, who was that boy? And they're like, let's look for him. He might be the true messenger of God. I'm like, oh, they are such a cult. Like, no, Mob, get away. Get away from them. Mm-mm. And so then Reagan is like, oh, typical mind control. Solved it. I love that Reagan manages to steal the show even if he's in this episode for like 2 minutes. And he's like, Mob Donald's. Oh my god, I just paused on the bag. It's Mob Donald's. And there's a little Saitama throwing the trash away in the recycle bin. So freaking precious. Mm-hmm. He's like, that's not salvation. He was just having them depend on him. It's a popular con based on crowd psychology. He's like, you're fine, Mob. You help those people more than you know. And of course, Reagan would know all about all the different cons with crowd psychology and things like that because he's a sham. So that makes sense. He's like, but considering you're hyper dense, it didn't work on you. Reagan doesn't realize that it's really because Mob had such insane telepathic powers. But he's like, that must not have worked on you because you're so dense. Reagan. He's like, and Mob's like, oh. He's like, which means, Mob, that today you happen to save some people that only you could have saved. I like that. And Mob, I see why Mob is friends with Reagan, because that is really cool that Reagan supported him in that moment. And he's like, you did something that only you could do, Mob, so that was really cool. You didn't have to be popular to do that. You took something that you consider to be your unpopular trait and did something that no popular kid could have done. So good on you, Mob. I'm like, that's really sweet, Reagan. You trash king. That was good. Good advice. And so we're back to 0 for Mob's progress towards Mob's explosion. We're back to 0. And then he wakes up and there's the green thing, the Slimer from the OP. He's like, good morning. Isn't it a lovely morning, partner? And then progress towards Mob's explosion. 20%. The fudge. Wow. And that's the end of the episode. Oh my God. This was just absolutely wonderful. I loved this. It was great. This episode was wonderful. So yeah, Reagan turns out to be not a bad mentor at the end of this episode. Poor Mob can't catch a break. He just wants to be popular and be more than he's repressed his telepathic powers and thus repressed himself emotionally, which is not healthy. And I feel for our boy. I do. And he's just trying to get Subomi-chan's attention. Forget her. She's garbage. Forget about her. Go with Misato. I like Misato a lot better already, and I've seen her for 5 minutes. But yeah, he ends up saving people from a cult. And now it's back to 0 and this little Slimer thing's shown up. So there we go. Was the Slimer thing, was it the ghost of that man? But it has the cheeks and everything. Was it? But surely it's not the ghost. He made him disappear. So whatever the hell this smiley ghost is, I'm assuming we're going to find out next episode. But already this episode went in directions I had no idea it was going in. And I'm 1000% here for it. So there we go. But I'm so excited to hear your comments down below. Please no spoilers, but I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. This episode was great. So I can't wait for episode 4. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Mob Psycho 100. Bye.